Hello and welcome to the Embrace Balance, Discover Joy podcast. I'm Amanda Butland, your host and intuitive life coach. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Embrace Balance, Discover Joy podcast. Today, my special guest is Ryan Yip. Hi, Ryan. So great for you to be with me today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Great. So I always like to start out with a little icebreaker question. Could you share with us what hobby or activity brings you the most joy and why?
Great. One of my passions is actually acting. And it's interesting because when I was a young kid, I used to try to make my parents laugh and used to try to learn magic tricks for my aunts and uncles to try to impress them. Um, and uh, and then I was kind of quiet in school. And then, I grew up in a small town in the San Joaquin Valley. So I was pretty much the only Asian in my school growing up. And, there was some, maybe when the boys tried to impress the girls, I got more quiet because there was some bullying. And that's the first time I kind of experienced maybe people making fun of me because of my race or things like that. And so kind of got more feeling like I wanted to be invisible and not make waves. And so there was one class I had in English that they had a recording. They had us do a scene from a play like Macbeth or something like that. And I remember being in that scene, and my scene partner, she flubbed her line, and I was so nervous, I started laughing uncontrollably. And so I was so mortified, I was so embarrassed by that I just did not take up any acting, anything like that for years until I was in my late 20s, early 30s. And believe it or not, I had an astrological chart reading. And one of the things it said was, if you don't do something just for yourself to express yourself, that you'll always be envious of other people that are doing that are performing or expressing themselves. And, I always thought, oh, I should just be helping people, right? That's the main thing. But really, I think to balance my life, I needed this expression of just doing something for me. And so I started with an acting class at the Asian American Theater Company here in the San Francisco Bay Area. That led to me taking some improv classes. And now, I do some extra work on big movies that come through town, or short films or commercials. And I find it very gratifying and kind of filling a different part of me. So that was a long explanation of what I do for fun. Yeah.
But I love that background where it was something that you had done, but then had this experience where it was like, oh, I don't want to do that. But then coming back to it years later and having this fulfillment that you feel from it. That's awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing that story with
Sure.
us. So we're here to talk about coaching. And I know you're a coach, and I would love if you wouldn't mind maybe sharing with us sort of how you became a coach. Like, what was your journey to getting into coaching?
Sure. Yeah. It's a very circuitous kind of route that I took. I actually got some degrees in actually biology and biochemistry and molecular biology. And so I started out as a research biologist or research scientist. And I found that what we call bench science, or in the laboratory, I didn't really feel that much of fulfillment at that time that I was doing it. It was a lot of tedious manual labor, doing kind of experiments and, doing test tube type work. So I wasn't very fulfilled by that. And honestly, I wasn't that successful at it. So it so happened that one of the laboratory managers had a technical writing company. So I went and joined him as a technical writer and wrote several manuals. And I liked expressing, communicating ideas, researching, and as I did in school, researching and kind of solving problems, and explaining things in a kind of a non-complex way. So that kind of suited me at that time. And so I stayed in that field working for companies for many years. I think as my personality kind of grew, from being a kind of a shy person to being a little more outgoing, I did do, I was more into self-help and things like that. And so as my personality grew, then I wanted to get more close to the customers. So I took one course in instructional design, became a writer for courses, training courses, still in the biotech field. Then I just did some training, and then I got up in front of people. That was an experience, and then became a product marketing manager. Um, was helping customer. I love the customer service side of it, going to trade shows and things like that. And then I had this, as many people do, I there was a reorganization, and I got laid off, and then I had to really think about what I really wanted to do with my life at that point. And I had this feeling about how people integrate their personal values with company values. I mean, I had some conflicts with that, being in the field I was in and the company I was with. And just so happened that a friend of mine was developing a software product for branding software for small businesses. And I was helping, because that's part of marketing. That's what I was doing at the time. So I helped him test that software. And when I was looking at it, I was thinking, this could be used for individuals for their branding, what we call personal branding. And the metaphors are similar. One metaphor is the metaphor of a tree. So when you're thinking about personal branding or marketing yourself, if you're trying to find a job, if you think of it, the root of the tree as your IP, whether it's your experience, your skills, your education, and so forth, that is the root of your brand, let's say. And then if you go up the trunk of the tree, you might have a competency statement, a mission statement, all leads to, you might even have a tagline with the people that, the companies use that, but you could use it too. And then, so I find it really great for brainstorming this software. And since I'm a scientific person, there's assessments, of course, that you can use on life purpose and values and so forth. And then as you go up the trunk of the tree, you determine your unique value proposition and your personal style. And then in the canopy of the tree is the offerings. It's the fruit. The fruit of the tree is your offering. What is your unique value proposition that you offer a client or you offer a company? And then, companies use what we call upsell. So, when you have a unique value proposition, you say, I can give you this, but once I give you this, then maybe I could help you with your, life purpose, your integration of your life with your career, or I can offer you resume writing or things like that. So there's just some ancillary offerings that you have. So anyway, so the tree is part of your personal branding. And anyway, there's a lot of similarities. So once I get into personal branding, then I took some training in career coaching. And that's really what the start of my career in career coaching. And we can go into when I started executive coaching, there was some other kind of seminal moments in my life that kind of helped me with more of the executive coaching part of it too.
Yeah, it's a really interesting, like you mentioned, it's sort of a very complicated journey because your background in like I think it was it biotech? It was like
Yeah.
science, right?
Yes.
And then ending up in career coaching and executive coaching, so different.
Yeah. Yeah, it
But
is. It is.
yeah, but that's just a really interesting way of, how you ended up there. And I'd love maybe for you to share a little bit more with the work that you do today, right, with the executive and the career coaching. Maybe because I mean, I know like the job markets are still, super like not super great right now, and there are
Mhm.
a lot of people still looking for work and challenged in that space. And I'm just curious, for people that might be unemployed for like over a year. I'm just curious if you can maybe share like what are like the big things that people maybe don't know that would help them the most at this point. Because I know a lot of people out there are still struggling with this.
Sure, sure, sure. And, there are a lot of kind of modern techniques you can do, like AI or artificial intelligence helps people do resumes and things like that. But to me, the basic principles are somewhat the same. And when I was laid off, I did what everybody kind of starts out doing is I sent out 50 resumes for all different kind of and changed my resume over and over to fit different applications I was sending out different companies and getting very few responses. And so I think the principle for me is somewhat the same, and that is networking is key, right? If you think that, I mean, I understand that, you want to keep busy, so you keep sending out resumes, you keep applying to different companies, and just to realize that the percentage of success for that type of strategy, just sending out resumes and applying to companies, no matter, even if you tailor those resumes, it's still less than 50%. I would say more like 25% or less. So really, the way you can increase your chances is getting a referral. And how do you get the referral? It is through networking. Whether you use former coworkers, your childhood friends, people that you meet socially, you want to find someone in the company you're interested in, ideally, that can give you that, what they used to call walk over and hand the resume to the HR person or hand it over to the hiring manager. That's still key in my view. And that's been, when I started coaching 5 years ago, it's the same principle, is that you don't want to be competing with 200 people that are applying for the same job as you, going through what we call the ATS system or the applicant tracking system that they use at companies now, because you're going to be, a lot of the resumes you send in, even with a nice cover letter, is going to be rejected at least 50% of the time. And also recruiters, they start using their connections first before they even look at the applications that are coming in through the ATS system, right? They'll say, oh, I know someone who works here. Maybe they have a good recommendation about who I should hire. Because the statistics are, if you hire someone from a referral, that person will stay 3 or 4 years. If you hire someone straight out of a application pool, that person might stay 1 or 2 years because you don't really know them personally. Even though you may interview them, you don't know them personally. You don't have a reference about their past history. I mean, really someone who might work with them or know them on a personal level. So I would say that's key. And then all the other things about how you interview well, and salary negotiation and upskilling, how you make your skill level relevant for today's market. All those things obviously are important, in your resume, optimizing your resume and all of that. Those things are very important. But to me, number one is still networking.
Yeah, I'm just curious for people that, don't maybe have big networks of people that they know that are in the same industry. Maybe they have a lot of friends, but they're not in the same industry, and maybe they don't know a lot of people in the industry, and maybe they, aren't comfortable, like, say an introvert, right? Like maybe they're not comfortable with getting out there, putting themselves out there, and really like creating a network. What sort of guidance would you give to somebody who struggles with networking?
There's a couple of things, and number one, well, one of them is you can do now a lot of things online, right? So you want to make your LinkedIn profile as attractive as possible, and also in that vein, you also want to join groups, LinkedIn groups. First, make your LinkedIn profile optimized that for what you're looking for in terms of work. Then once you have that LinkedIn profile the way you want it, then go out and join LinkedIn groups and ask questions or provide expertise. So you don't necessarily have to talk to someone face to face in the beginning, you can just kind of, you want to basically present yourself as an expert in a particular niche. I would say in general, that's a good thing to do, is to find a niche that you can be an expert in. And if you have to take a few courses, I mean, in 2 weeks, people can find you can get enough information to really kind of present yourself as an expert in a niche, or at least be very, very familiar with the terminology and so forth. That's really key, because you don't want to have that kind of competition. You want to narrow it down so you don't have that much competition, and yet there's enough of a demand for you. So you kind of have to figure that out, and then you can join different groups and kind of interact with people. The second thing I would say is that if you are, and I think it's probably best to do some in-person networking, the way I like to think of it is always, when I'm going into a situation like that, think about being of service. I mean, I just don't think about I'm being judged, or I'm looking for a handout. I would say when you go into a networking situation, think about, how can I help the next person I meet? And you never know how you can. I mean, maybe you know somebody that they want to that has a contact, or that they want, or some information that they might want. So I would say, to a person who's introverted and maybe not comfortable in social situations, well, first of all, maybe take some classes to kind of get yourself more. I mean, and I forgot the group, but the groups where you speak, you kind of practice speaking. Those types of groups, that organization, get involved with that to make yourself more comfortable. And there are ones with, if English is your second language, there's groups that for those types of people, and there's courses for those types of people, and I can certainly refer people if they want. But yeah, so being of service is one way to kind of calm the nerves a little bit, and just saying, it's an exchange, mutual exchange. You're not just kind of asking for a hand, or don't have to be. I mean, especially in the Bay Area, so many people are looking for work. I mean, you probably meet people that are in similar situations, or have been. So most people are willing to help if you just approach them in a nice way. Mm-hmm. So that's what the two things I would say about trying to find a job in a let's say a poor economy or a competitive economy.
Yeah, and I think the group that you're probably thinking, was it Toastmasters? Is that
Toastmasters? Yeah, okay. That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Yeah, and I like what you said about going into a networking conversation with somebody and providing service. Because you're right. I mean, I think a lot of the time people aren't comfortable because they feel like I'm here to get something from them, right? And so they have that sort of like uncomfortable feeling of, I don't feel comfortable asking people for help, right? I think a lot of people feel that way. So I love your message of going into it with a way of providing some sort of service, however it is that you might be able to offer help to them, so that it is an exchange, and it's not sort of all one-sided. Because I think there's a lot of discomfort when you think about going to someone just to ask for help on something. So I really like that perspective.
Yeah, and of course you need to be prepared. I mean, need to have your elevator pitch, and with artificial intelligence and things like that, you can develop one that may be more, very articulate, or can help you, develop one. But yeah, you need to prepare that elevator pitch, and even have a marketing plan. I mean, you want to have the elevator pitch. You want to have what you want to do for your next position. Kind of do I want to do analysis? Do I want to do sales? Kind of the different tasks that you want to perform. Maybe have that as part of a one-sheet marketing plan. Kind of the industries you want. Do you want to work in a large company, small, medium size? And then maybe a list of companies that you would like to, or the type of company that you would like to work for, whether it's one of the FANG companies, Facebook, Amazon, or maybe a smaller company. And that's what I think a lot of maybe engineers or tech people, or maybe that's an alternative, is maybe they worked in a very large company, but now maybe now's the time to maybe work in a smaller company. You may not have the salary that you had before, but maybe it'd be better to work in a smaller company and then work your way back as the economy grows and and gets better.
Mhm. Yeah, I like what you said about being very specific about sort of what you're looking for. And I had a similar experience when I had gotten laid off a few years back, and I would be talking to headhunters, and they'd be like, "Well, what is it that you want to do?" And I was like listing off all the things that I could do, but not listing off the things that I really wanted. And it wasn't until somebody really pinned me down and was like, no, you tell me exactly what job you're looking for, what size of company, exactly what you want. And it's sort of magical. But as soon as I verbalized that to him, like the opportunity appeared. It was exactly what I was looking for. And I don't know, we can talk about it just manifest, like I manifested it because I spoke it aloud and had that intention. But it was a very odd way that the job appeared to me, and it was never expected, but it was exactly what I was looking for. So I love what you said about just being very specific, because I think oftentimes, when you are just broad and you're like, well, I can do all these things, but if you're not specific and don't know exactly what you want, then you're not going to be able to manifest exactly that thing that, to come to you. So,
Yeah, and that's a great example of manifestation. And I believe that job search is partly scientific and partly it's science and art, and you can do all the assessments and you can do all the the preparation, but the creativity and finding your niche and all of that, there's a certain art to it, and I like to explore that with people, the the art of it or the creativity or also, trying to find, there was always an adage a while ago, follow your passion and everything else will follow. And I would say yes, but but I would say also filter that passion through business reality or the reality that you find yourself in, because are you going to be comfortable making the income following your passion before you kind of really get going and maybe be very, very successful. You have to kind of take that into account, as well as being very passionate about something, especially if you're going into the arts or something like that. So, that's why I always say, well, we're trying to find a mutually beneficial relationship between your unique value or your abilities and what the world needs.
mm,
The second part, what the world needs, is that, that's business reality or economic reality or whatever. Yeah.
right.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. There has to be a need.
mhm.
I did want to touch a little bit more on, because I know you do more than just career coaching and executive coaching, and I would love to learn a little bit more about the, sort of the whole suite of offerings that you provide to people beyond just the sort of the career stuff. Would you mind talking a little bit more about, what your whole coaching offerings are?
Well, yeah, mainly it's I'm moving more toward executive coaching, but it's like you do, obviously you do the life coaching, and I find that, there was an old kind of dictum that, career coaching is more working on behavior or habits and not doing any type of, let's say, psychoanalysis and things like that. But I find that, and this is where I kind of this other seminal moment in my career is when I found several coaches or mentors that thought that or still think that changing identity or changing your what you feel about yourself or who you are really helps in your work also. That was Marshall Goldsmith and Chadman Tang, he's known as Meng, who was one of the first engineers at Google, who started a program there called Search Inside Yourself. It was more of a performance improvement, but actually it was about emotional intelligence, about stress reduction and things like that. And then also Bill George is, and what they have in common actually most of them is actually they have a spiritual background, but they work in a secular. They do what they provide in terms of philosophy and coaching is a secular way of teaching it, which is emotional intelligence, as I mentioned, and mindfulness, and so forth. So that was really a point at which I said, hey, I could go into kind of coaching people, life coaching and things like that, and executive coaching in terms of people wanting to be more. So for example, and we talked, we kind of mentioned the extrovert ideal and the introversion of maybe that people are taught in Asia, especially Confucianism of introversion or respecting your elders and all of that, and how that kind of conflicts with American values of you should speak up, you should take action, you should always say something, whatever it is, right? So I kind of wanted to address some of that. I even when in my career coaching, when I talk to people that are technical managers and they want to get promoted to the VP level, but they don't know, they're facing some blocks, especially if they're people of color, where they have maybe some language barriers. So it's about how do you develop a philosophy of managing. So it's conflict resolution and emotional intelligence, and those types of what we call soft skills. You kind of learn from inspecting your own values, really. And then, of course, you get some training or read some things about people who are experts in that field. So that I help people, kind of develop their philosophies of when you get into an interview and someone asks you, so if you have a conflict with someone on your team or a coworker, how do you handle that? And so you have to be able to, I recommend that people develop a philosophical answer to that. Well, I believe that I can work with anyone as long as we both behave in a professional manner. It's always important that I understand the point of view of the person who I may have a conflict with, that I put myself in their shoes and at least understand their point of view. That's the first step toward negotiating a resolution to maybe a conflict. And although that's a career kind of advice that I'm giving, it's also kind of a personal value type of coaching that I'm giving, and then I kind of work toward that. And the opposite is true. I did some executive coaching where there was a manager or director from China who was imposing a kind of a Eastern kind of philosophy on his management of a team who were Americans or Asian Americans or Americans from the U.S., and there was having some conflicts because he wasn't giving them a voice or to express themselves. He just said, just work harder, right? So a lot of Confucian is just, work harder, respect your elders, and just do the work. So, in combination with career coaching is executive coaching, and also more life coaching in terms of mindfulness, meditation, and so forth.
Yeah, I like that combination. And I like what you talked about, in the almost like, I guess it's more the career executive coaching side where, looking at people's values and how that aligns with, sort of the job and the work. So yeah, it's necessary to align those things because otherwise there is that conflict. So I want to start wrapping up, but this has been a really great conversation. I think we've all learned so much about sort of like the job market and how to, support people that are, looking and challenged in that space. And I know how important that is for people to hear these days. So as we wrap up, I just wanted to ask you, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience today? Any message that you'd like to share with everyone?
Well, I've kind of gone over a lot, and there's not much. I would just say that not much to add, but I would say I think the point of being of service in whatever situation you find yourself will help you a lot. I think it will help your confidence and help people kind of relax in whatever situation they're in. And to me, it's not an arrogance, but if I go in and being of service and I'm trying to see if there's a good fit with a particular company or a client or whatever, it's not going to really affect my self-esteem if it doesn't work out, right? I'm going in service, offering my services, but if it doesn't work out, I'm feeling fine. I know what I can do. I've done it before. As long as you're not kind of trying to do something that you're not qualified for, that's a different issue. But anyway, so I would just say being of service is the main point.
Great. I love that message again. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being with me today. It's been a great conversation, and I've really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Amanda. Appreciate it.
I invite you to subscribe to the Embrace Balance, Discover Joy podcast and join our community. If you feel inspired by what you hear, please leave a review and share this podcast with others who might benefit. And remember, it's never too late to embrace balance and discover joy in your life. Stay tuned for our upcoming episodes filled with inspiring stories and valuable insights. Until next time, take care and be kind to yourself.